Good evening and welcome to the Decameron Opera Coalition Happy Hour Directors in Conversation. On behalf of the Decameron Opera Coalition, I'm librettist Matt Barresi, co-creator of Tales from a Safe Distance. And if you haven't seen one of our happy hours yet, what we get each Friday is a cohort of artists from Tales from a Safe Distance. And they're going to talk about their biographies, their work on their piece from Tales from a Safe Distance, and hopefully we'll hear about their philosophies and their thoughts on the future of opera and opera as film as well. Before we get to those fine artists, I want to let you know that the year 2020 is almost gone. And I don't think anybody's particularly sad to see the back of it, but when it goes, it also means that Tales from a Safe Distance comes down from the internet. So if you have purchased a ticket and you want to see it again, or you have not yet watched it, or if you are considering purchasing a ticket for a friend, now is the time to do so, because come New Year's, that will be taken down, put off in the DOC version of the Disney Vault, and won't come out for some time. It's the holiday season. You may be looking for a gift to buy that opera lover or film lover or theater person in your life, or arts curious person in your life, and this is a great way to do it because we have an unprecedented sampling of 9 opera companies from across the country, all kinds of sounds and looks, people and places and stories that are there for many, many art lovers to get a sample of all the great art that's being made across this country. And I hope that you will be a part of it. Next week, next Friday, we have one more happy hour before the year is out. And we'll be talking to singers from the piece, because what would opera be without singers? It would be very, very quiet is what it would be. So please join us again on Friday. All right, it is time to introduce these fine artists that have joined us tonight. We have directors, we also have videographers, and even a graphic artist. But these are the people who really determine the look of the pieces that you see in Tales from a Safe Distance, and had such a masterful and strong hand in the storytelling. So let's meet them. What I think I'll do is you could just call out your first name, and if you could introduce yourself, the piece you wrote, with what company, and your role on the piece. Then we'll dig into some more substantive questions. So let's start with Kathy Whitman.
I knew you were going to do that too. I'm Kathy Whitman. My company is called Ball Square Films. I specialize in the arts, videos for the performing arts, documentary and such. And I edited the frame story and worked with the coalition kind of early on to help pull it together. And I edited together the episodes themselves. So I collected all of the videos and then put them in line. As Matt says, tee them up, tee them up, tee them up. Put a frame story, put a story, put a frame story, put a story. So that was me.
We kept this lady busy. I mean, I think she's been no less busy since the project went up. But boy,
my favorite line is, next week it'll be calmer. Next week things will calm down and I'll answer some emails. I promise.
That day may come, but probably not next week.
Christmas. I'm taking Christmas off.
All right, Christina, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Baldwin. I am the director with Lyric Opera of the North, and our offering was Everything Comes to a Head.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank
Chris
you.
Lyons.
Sorry, Matt. I'm Chris Lyons. I was the designer and illustrator of the opera Sourdough, which was written and composed. She was the composer and librettist, my sister, my baby sister. 17-year junior baby sister. So it was interesting for me, from a family dynamic, to work as a creative team with my baby sister, and it couldn't have gone better. I had a wonderful time.
Wonderful. That's a wonderful piece. We want to hear more about that dynamic, and we want to hear about, I mean, it's a unique piece to have an illustrated opera film. So we'll want to hear a lot more about that tonight. Milena, if you would please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Malena Deyen. I directed The Late Walk. Bear Opera is a company. We are based in New York City. And yeah, that's me.
Welcome. Sequoia.
Hi, I'm Sequoia Hawk. I directed and did the cinematography for The Sky Where You Are with an opera theater.
Thank you for joining us. George Cedarquist.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to see the Decameron Opera Coalition family, and for our audience, wherever you are, however you're watching, whenever you're watching, thanks for hanging out with us. George Cedarquist, Artistic Director at Chicago Fringe Opera and Director for Corsair, part of Episode 4.
Very special piece, and it makes my beloved city of Chicago look absolutely gorgeous. So please do check that piece out, Corsair, if you have not yet. Danny Brilo, hello.
Hi, I am Danny Brilo. I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, working with Milwaukee Opera Theater, and I directed Orsa y Bernata.
Welcome back. And Wayne McConnell is here.
Hello, everybody. Wayne McConnell from Fargo, North Dakota. Well, technically Moorhead, but I work in Fargo. I assisted in directing the opera Dinner for Three, along with the Fargo Moorhead Opera Company.
Welcome, Wayne. Thank you very much. All right, now at the risk of all of us talking over one another all night, I'd like to kind of open the floor so that it doesn't feel like we're taking turns all evening. Now, you're all directors, and every one of you is at least or more capable than I of leading this conversation. So I also encourage you, if you think of a question as someone else is speaking, I'd like to get a conversation going. And I know that can be difficult on Zoom, but please don't be shy if you'd like to jump in and dovetail off of what someone is saying. But to get things started, why don't we start with a little bit of biographical information on you folks. So some of you are knee deep in opera all the time. Some of you who have just worked on your first opera. You've come from theater. You've come from another art form, or it's the first time that you are mixing film and opera. Some of you have done a lot of film. I want to hear about that. Were you born into opera? Did you grow into opera, or was opera thrust upon you? Because I don't know that people necessarily early in life or in high school say, I want to be an opera director. I feel like largely that comes later. So if any, and eventually most or all of you could join in and say, what is your relationship to opera? And when did opera come into your life? We'd love to know.
Well, I started out as a singer. That's probably, for anyone who came from the opera route to this project, that may be a familiar story as well. And really always felt like I was most interested in the sort of conceptual behind the scenes aspects of the process. The first show I was in right out of college, I was in the chorus. And during Tech Week, I was always like, I just want to go sit in the house and watch what's going on. And eventually kind of realized that that was more where I felt at home. I still sing once in a while, but it definitely informs what I do both as a director, and I also wrote the libretto for our piece. I've done some translations of existing operas as well. So all those things, definitely I benefit from the experience of being a singer. I don't think I could do that without having that training, but it is something that I feel like I've kind of settled in more so. I never quite felt comfortable or the way some performers just love to sort of take in the audience. I never really found that. So this feels a little bit more like my groove, I guess.
Are there any other singers on the call? Malena and Christina. Malena, tell us about your relationship with them.
I'm a singer as well. The first training was as a singer, and I have a career as a singer. But a few years ago, I started. There was one specific project that I really wanted to do myself the way I envisioned it. And from there was a Piazzolla opera. I'm from Argentina, and it's Maria de Buenos Aires. I sang it a few times with other directors. And while I respected them, I was standing there thinking, oh man. So at some point, I actually was interviewing a director to say, will you direct this piece? And he said, well, it looks like you don't need me. I was so bossy on all my requirements of what needed to happen. So since then, I actually did an MFA here at Brooklyn College. There's a great program called Performance and Interactive Media Arts, PIMA. I'm very interested in the intersection with technology. from before the pandemics. So I actually finished my degree in May, just as and this here, now I found myself almost exclusively directing and working in this place with technology. I mean, in this semester, I did a production that was only videoing, really, and then a production like The Late Walk, or a video we presented for a Catapult opera that it's very, very tech heavy. But yeah, opera is where I live, where I come from. And
well, I'm glad you are already interested in the intersection of opera and technology, because woe betide anyone who is not interested at this point in the intersection of opera and technology. Christina, you mentioned that you were a singer. Is that how opera came into your directing life, or was it another way?
Yeah, I think I started as a singer, but I was also very interested in theater as well. So I'd bop between doing singing roles and doing Shakespeare, and go amongst the worlds a bit. And I started working with a French-American company called Theatre de la Jeune Lune, which was doing a lot of adaptations of opera. And that's where I found my people. I love opera, but I love new work. I absolutely adore new work. And I started working with them, and Theatre de la Jeune Lune was very based in a physical clown school tradition. So the way that we worked at character was a different thing. And I helped in adapting a few of their shows, took some of their operas on tour, sang in all of them, and also was a part of the, they talk about an actor creator in how they work on things. So there wasn't the division as much in creating works, and that people felt a great sense of authority over your work. So that led me towards adapting more pieces, writing pieces, directing. And so currently I'm actually the artistic director at the Jungle Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we do a lot of new work there. I love to work with Nautilus Music Theater, which is a new works hub. They're a great love of mine, and yeah, go new works, and I love these new ways, and I'm so glad that Decameron exists.
Well, I appreciate your work, because
Matt, I forgot to raise my hand when we were talking about singers. I was a boy soprano. Clearly, I'd blocked that out, but that was how I began singing. I was acting as well. I started directing in high school, and it wasn't until I was in graduate school that I actually found a way to fuse directing theater, directing plays with my musical background, which was opera. What was brand new for me, of course, for Decameron, and maybe others in the happy hour too, was moving into the realm of film. I mean, I don't really watch a lot of TV or film, and certainly when we were on location in September, I had no clue how to make a film.
But it seems like, George, I feel like you're off to the races now. Yeah, it seems like you settled into film, and you enjoyed the process and are going to continue.
I've totally not just made my peace with it, but utterly convinced that the fusion of film and opera is going to be part and parcel of this art form moving forward. I don't think it's going to be the only part of this art form, but I do think it's going to play a huge role, intra-pandemic and certainly post-pandemic. And I think that's a change for the better.
I'm inclined to agree. And do you think it's because it's artistically successful? Do you think it's because there will be future pandemics? Why do you think it's going to stay alive even when it's not quite as necessary as right now?
Because I think we've started to see the potential of it and the value of it, and we've been forced to take a leap that I think for many of us, a leap that needed to be taken, and sometimes we just have to be pushed to take that leap, but that is what the pandemic has done to many artists. It's forced them, not just in opera, not just in film, but to take a leap and try something new and see what the potential of that is.
I would jump in there just to add too that I think this is here to stay, and I hope it's here to stay, not only because we should have unlimited resources to express art however we want to, but I think accessibility is a huge issue in this. And for a long time, I had a hard time finding my niche in opera because of so many ways that it was inaccessible to so many people. And I'm very happy for all the ways that has, in my, nearly 30 years in this business, that I see this changing in so many ways. And I'm excited to hear about everyone else's intro into this opera. If you haven't come from the opera world, I feel like there's some what do you call it, jet lag in how you get some of these things done. And I would love to hear more about other people's experiences.
Has anybody never worked on an opera before? Was this a first opera project for anybody here? Sequoia, tell us about your experience. A whole bunch of folks.
Yeah, wow. I would definitely say when you said has opera been thrust upon you, I was like, that was definitely me. Kelly Turpin, the founder and the executive director of an opera theater at AOT, she definitely called me and was like, do you want to direct an opera? And I was like, I've never done opera before, right? But sort of my background is in theater. I did a lot of theater growing up, and that's sort of where I found my niche in a time and place, and in musical theater as well. So I have sort of that background as well, and the framework that comes with that. And then the last couple of years, I started doing film, and I do a lot of documentary filmmaking. But this was my first sort of opera film and my first sort of narrative film. And I think coming into it, I understood sort of all of those, I understood how the aspect of the film brain came in, as well as what we would have done in the theater sense, and sort of merge those together with, what would have come from being on stage and merging those two things together. And I think talking about this idea of opera being a film is really interesting to me, because I think, well, of course, anything can be a film. As a filmmaker, you think that the possibilities are, limitless. And so for this, I think it's an amazing opportunity. Like Christina said, it's the accessibility to it. So many people are more accessible to opera as a form of art just from doing what we've done with Decameron right now, of having it be so many operas in such an accessible format. And I think being able to continue that in the future is amazing.
All those, Christina mentioned those factors that make it inaccessible, and there are many, and some are sociocultural, some are financial, some are one in particular that has always bedeviled me a bit is pure geography. Opera is so decentralized, and everything doesn't stream to the movie theater like the Met. Everything doesn't get a recording. Most things don't. So you hear about an opera, there's a premiere, it's in City X. Maybe you read some reviews, or you see it in the back of Opera News, or you ask somebody who worked on it, and they tell you, and that's it. And there's always been sort of, I won't call it a crisis, but it's always been an uphill battle to get a second production, to get a third production. So premieres come and go, and that wonderful artistic conversation between pieces, between eras, between artists, I feel like it's cut off sometimes by geography. And so for things to be able to be filmed, to be on the web, where you can bring it into your house and you don't have to say, how was that show that premiered in Minnesota that I'll never see, is very exciting to me, particularly someone who works in new works. Yeah, Milena.
One interesting thing on the same line, to give an example, my thesis from this degree was in May, and we did it live. We streamed it live. And my parents down in Argentina, my in-laws in Israel, and my friend in South Africa all saw it. They saw it live. I mean, we did it in 3 different times. So we had a designer in Korea, we had the friends in Israel, Europe, and the ones here. But they saw it live. My parents never get to see me live, except they need to come specially. But as I was singing here in my living room, they were hearing me from all over the world. That it's very unusual and very inclusive. People don't need to be able to travel. They don't need to get physically in the theater. the issue of tickets is something we can talk about. This was also a very when something is open, when something is we need to pay to access it, but still it's also an issue that affects how you can include or exclude people. And yeah, it just opened a new, just all these possibilities of including all these people around the world. So just confirming the geographical barrier.
Well, I've heard from Maria Senzi-Sellner and Brennan Sellner are at DOC in the War Room in Pittsburgh right now, making all the boops and beeps of this call work. And they have looked at, they can see where the tickets have been purchased and where people have streamed Tales from a Safe Distance. And it's a globe, and that globe lights up. And it's a wonderful thing to see. It's very exciting. I mean, we certainly all think of opera as an international art form, but something that can actually be shared between all the countries is, I guess it's good to be alive right now when we can do that, when we can beam these things so easily from home to home. Wayne McConnell, you said, I think that a hand went up for new to the opera rodeo. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I did work with the Fargo Moorhead Opera on a different project, more of like a history piece or whatnot. But my background is traditionally, it's filmmaking, and the last 15 years or so is primarily in advertising and then content creation. So this was kind of a really interesting foray into the medium, if you will, like knowing what to expect, think through things like sync sound, how are we going to get everything to work. That was kind of more where I came in as a technical lead, if you will. And then our director, I mean, in the true sense of the word, would have been Frederick Harengues. Frederick, if you're watching, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but and it was really fantastic from my perspective, how these two things kind of melded together. They kind of felt like I wouldn't call it a happy accident, more so as I call it something that's meant to be. There's always something that comes out of a live performance or attending a live performance that's that definitely has its own aura, its own feeling. There's merit in that as well, but again, you kind of break boundaries with this ability to record and for posterity, show to other people, and then also to live stream, where you expand your audience to places where you couldn't possibly be before. So yeah, it was very interesting entering into opera in this method or this way.
Well, I heard a lot at the beginning of the pandemic. I heard a lot from folks such as a lot of I'm doing a film because I have to, but I hate it, and I can't wait to get back in the opera house. Now, wait to get back in the opera house and play to rooms full of seats and do all the things that we've trained to do. But I'm hearing a lot less, and I hate this and don't ever want to do it again. It seems like the attitude I'm seeing from all you folks is starting to grow across the creative and interpretive artist world, and it seems like maybe this is something we can handle, and we're finding the joy in it.
Well, I think you imagine if you have how many seats in an opera house, 200, you can sell 200 tickets. Well, if you can sell 400, 500, 600 tickets at maybe a lower rate, I'd say it works.
And I think now, sorry, that we've been in this for a while. There's the fear and the loss. There's so many technicians and artisans and people who are out of work, and our industry has been decimated. And I think that in wanting to express a solidarity with people who we want desperately to get back to work, we want that to happen. And I think there's a big investment in realizing that there need not be a fear of this replacing anything. This can be an expansion, as we are talking about. This is not an either or situation. This is the growth mindset of generative work, that we're looking for things that are complementary to what we're currently doing. And God bless it, wouldn't it be amazing if you could have more people come to it, as we've all been saying, that I grew up in a very rural area, and it's much more urban now, with the way life goes. But going to see an opera was not something that was on anyone's agenda. And I think in general, the way that we can harness the tools that we have, we can expand our possibilities.
Well, let me ask Kathy Whitman. I think you've been at the intersection of opera and film. It was on your website today. I can't remember why I was snooping on your website. I think I need to pull up your headshot or something. And I saw opera projects and opera adjacent projects dating back years. So this is not entirely new to you. And I feel like perhaps you, as much as have your ear to the ground of where this has been and where this is headed. What do you think?
You know, I have been doing opera for years, but I've come to it as an archivist. So this idea of, although my first opera was projections. My very first opera was doing projections for a Tristan and Isolde in Milwaukee, Danny, for Florentine, which was amazing. But in the last few years, it's been going into the theater with a bunch of cameras, documenting for the Boston Early Music Festival, for Boston Baroque, capturing it. And my favorite is the premieres. Beth Morrison Projects does amazing things. We get to go with the cameras, capture it, create a trailer so that they can get a second show. You know, I got to do Ellen West's Prism, which was amazing. We made that video. We sent it to the Pulitzer. I like to tell people the Pulitzer was because of me, because I got the video done in 3 days and got it to the committee. That's a joke. You know, but you know what strikes me, there's a Stoic philosophy that the obstacle is the way, which was all the rage a couple years ago, but it's been very comforting to me in this time. And you know, before the pandemic hit, I was saying to myself, how do I take it to the next level? What's next for me? I'm getting bored. I'm getting good at this. I'm getting a lot of clients. I want to do something more interesting. And the pandemic forces you. We can't go back into theater. But how do we keep our audience engaged? How do we keep our artists paid? How do we keep this going so that when we can get back into the theater, we still have an audience and we still have artists. You know, I don't know how many artists I know who are now driving trucks for UPS or starting a side business or, you know, learning how to sell insurance. And it's heartbreaking. I think theater artists and musicians are some of the most creative and innovative people I know, but we need to keep them around. We need to keep their jobs. You know, I mean, it's overwhelming.
Well, and
there's also a real sense of loss from performers. You know, we mentioned earlier singers who have said, I hate making film, is that there is a sense of loss from performers about a live audience, knowing both as a performer and an audience member that in real time, in that moment, you do affect the performance. You know, you can call it energy, you can call it chi, you can call it whatever you want, and but you do have an impact as an audience member on that performance. And in film, regardless of what I do as an audience member watching a film, it will not change. And there's a great sense of loss there, I think, from performing artists. And maybe there is a way to alter that and change that experience.
Well, you know, I've noticed that the talkback has become incredibly popular. A lot of groups will create, all of my clients are doing this. Do we live stream or do we create something and then present it? And most of them come down on the side of, we're going to have a glitch. Does everybody remember that Mother's Day show for the Broadway that was an hour late starting because
Sondheim.
of glitch? Right, the Sondheim thing. That was it. Nobody wants that. And the glitches and the thing, people come down on the side of, we want to control it. We want to shoot something, edit it, and present it. But how do we connect to people? How do we give the audience a chance? And I used to joke that the play ends and you have to be careful of the stampede of people trying to get out before the talkback starts. But now, twice the people are logging in. People need that connection. They need to express the fact that they were there. They want to applaud. They want to be a part of it. Just like you were saying, George, the live connection, the community of us watching something together. And I always say the catharsis of the audience is not, you get a catharsis from a film, but it's different to be in the room to gasp together, at that moment, or the curtain going up and everybody experiencing the scene change. Oh my goodness, the town is ruined. What happened at intermission? Let's wait and see.
Well, and if
we miss that.
one-way communication. If we just had stories we wanted to tell and impose them upon the world, and we didn't want feedback, we could write books. We could write a note and put it in a bottle and throw it into the sea. But we've gone into the performing arts because we enjoy the feedback. And I heard on the composer call last week, on the composer happy hour, and this is true for me as well, the reason that many of us have chosen opera is because there is even more feedback than adjacent art forms, than theater, than musical theater. It feels a little more immediate to me because it's rowdier. I mean, because there's more shouting and there's more emotion coming back at you, even, booing and throwing of things, whether those
And
are
it's riskier. I mean, I don't know if you share the thrill of the tenor about to reach the high note, and the whole audience is like, "Oh, is it gonna happen? Yes, it happened." There's something very risky, very intense about the liveness of opera. That, yeah.
Well, I don't want to leave Chris out of this. Chris, you've got a lot of opera in your family. But this is the first time that they've dragged you in?
I was raised, I grew up an undersized basketball player in South Buffalo, New York, raised by 4 visual artists. So opera was never anything I imagined engaging with. But my first job out of college was with Milton Glaser in New York City. And I don't know if you guys know who he is or experienced with him. Wonderful guy, but he always had classical music playing. That's the closest I came to opera, was Puccini and Milton Glaser's drinking sake and eating sushi before those were things. I mean, he was a pioneer with sake and sushi. But then my sister went through school and was trained and got her doctorate in music and opera, and she married a composer. So every time you go to their home in Rhinebeck, it is opera, and it's wonderful. And I've been to their shows, and I've worked with her on her New York City opera organization. I do some of the promotional graphics, but I've never done what I did with Sourdough, where she had a musical idea, she had a concept, and she said to me, "Will you work on this with me and visualize what I'm trying to bring to life here?" And she would play. She recorded all 3 tracks, and she would play it, and she'd make changes. But as she played it, I was trying to get inspired to tell the story. And for me, I mean, when I do work for the New York Times, I do a piece, it runs in the paper, and then it's done, and it's one piece. And I did a set of postage stamps, licked them, put them on the envelope, they're gone. And my work is very of the moment. This there was a permanence to it, and there was a real joy in helping tell a story. And as a result, I've now started upping my skills on After Effects. You guys worked with After Effects. It's one of the Adobe Animation. It's one of the most complicated bits of software I've ever worked in. But it's enabling me now to bring this aspect of storytelling to my work at a whole different level. And I attribute that to working with my sister and really having to dig deep and help her tell a story. And to me, I thought this Decameron Opera Coalition, this made opera accessible. The stories they weren't what I view, because I'm the outlier here, but when I think of opera, I think of Puccini, and I think of these grand staging and costumes. And that piece in Chicago was beautiful. I mean, that was real storytelling. And the way my sister found a story about sourdough and put it to music, and I couldn't, every time she would play it for me, I would cry. And I don't often get moved like that by art. And opera, I think, hits me at a different level. So I'm thrilled to be engaged with opera now.
Well, welcome. Well, your piece was gorgeous. Let's talk about the looks of these pieces, because one of because we are getting so much feedback from people who are able to log into these calls and to the show and type right in there and send little hearts up the picture and email us. And we are getting a lot of feedback about these shows. And one thing that we're consistently hearing is that people love how different the looks are of these pieces. And in 1 second that it's a different piece, and you can tell these pieces apart from one another, and their works are their looks very signature. And we've got another guest, and I want to say hello to him. John De Los Santos is here. He is the librettist and the director of the Roost for Urban Arias. John, hello.
Hey, Matt. Sorry, everybody. Bad traffic, but I'm here.
Well, thank you for joining us. Well, we want you to jump in on this question. We're talking about the looks of these pieces. They have such signature looks. So I'd like to hear from any and all of you, how did you determine the look? And of course, now, because this isn't just setting up the mise en scene with with designers and so forth, there's also scouting now because you're making a film, right? You actually have to physically bring people to a place as opposed to inventing a place that people come to see. So how did you determine the signature looks of these films?
Well, I guess I'll start since ours was so specific, but it was just, in our case, it was just the setting was almost another character in the piece. And so the scouting was really the big part of it we had a couple like preliminary sessions where Elizabeth, the singer composer in the piece, and then Crystal, the videographer, took some walks through those woods. But eventually there was one day where I just myself went and took a bunch of pictures on my phone and then took a picture of the screen on the map app so that then I could see where every single thing was. And I came home, put it all together into a map. And then by that point, I knew it well enough that I didn't need the map. But it was just about thinking, okay, I wrote the libretto, gave it to Elizabeth, got the music back, and I would walk around the woods and just listen and think like, this spot be good, would this be good? And sort of just went with my gut and said it felt like, this feels like she wants to sing this part here. She wants to do this action here or whatever it is. And then just kind of put it together that way. And because we had one person playing two different characters, we needed to do it on separate days. So I kind of had to conceive of like, okay, she's going to sing as this character in these locations, but then still know in advance all the other locations so that, because we only got one chance to do the first character because then she had to give herself a haircut. So it was like that was really a totally different planning process than I, would do in a theater. But I think we showcased it as kind of as many different locations as we could without getting confusing, I think was.
But it's a beautiful, spooky, rich location. I mean, that piece without that location. I look forward to seeing that piece without that location. Like, I want to see.
I don't even know how it's possible. I mean, you could do a live performance, with either pre-recorded tracks or with two singers, or I don't know. I would be really interested to see what a different director would do with it in a live setting because it would be totally different. But I felt like the woods were so part of the story that I personally I wouldn't ever want to try to not do it without that because it's just kind of like, I would rather have somebody else make those aesthetic decisions because it's so ingrained in my head as part of the piece, I guess.
Well, I was so jealous watching. A lot of you got on social media and took making of pictures and said, I'm filming today and here we are. And, so George is in the lake and John is out in Virginia, and it's just this gorgeous place where he filmed his piece. And, even Sequoia stuffed in a bathroom. It was in this like gorgeous sun-dappled house. And I thought, I wish I was filming with them today because it looks like it's so gorgeous and they're having such fun. Other folks, how'd you find your place? How'd you find the look?
Well, the one requirement that Gilda had was that we had three characters and she wanted them to remain gender neutral. So and from a pragmatic perspective, I had over 100 drawings to do. So I had to keep the graphic style of it pretty simple. So we got to a place surprisingly early where I designed the three characters, we tweaked them a little bit, and then she wrote to the characters and the characters developed. I changed them a little bit, but I think we stayed pretty true to the spirit of each of the three characters. And that was a wonderful challenge. But in terms of the style, I had to keep it simple just because the time constraints and the difficulty of that many drawings. So it was a great learning experience.
I can jump in with my experience. Is that for Lyric Opera of the North, I actually was probably one of the last people to join the project. So we had, I've worked with Lyric Opera of the North before, and Sarah Lawrence is a wonderful visionary there. And as we were talking about this piece and what was so specific to Loon's aesthetic, and there, to use corporate talk, brand, there's this beautiful illustrative quality of Anne Gumper's work. And that was a very important piece for Sarah that that was carried through in whatever project would be done. So when I came on board, there was already this slew of amazing sketches by Anne Gumper for how she was seeing this work take shape and what this place was. And so this was an illustrated background. The singers were in front of green screens, and then trying to suss out exactly how we would use the elements was how I plugged into the piece. But it was lovely to be able to enter into a group of collaborators with Bill Munson, who did our video, and there were all the amazing singers. There was already a really great sense of camaraderie already there. So I was very fortunate.
So interesting walking into the process at that point. And I've worked with Anne Gumper. She's designed a couple of pieces that we've written before. And she is a miracle that walks among us. She just does spectacular work. So they're already down, like that concept was already there, and there was already a look to the show, and it was going to have that layered, like the people walking around in water. Oh, what a show! So what was that like to walk in to that concept?
I mean, I tell even, frankly, Matt, for even tonight, I was like, Sarah, are you sure? Don't you want to come on this call too? So hi, Sarah. But it was wonderful. It was wonderful to talk about a work with another set of the hierarchy of needs. There were a couple things already taken care of. So it was fun to be able to attack it with another set of demands of figuring out, okay, how are we all going to function together? And then how is this action going to happen? It was a lovely challenge that didn't feel very much like a challenge, but just like a nice warm bath to sink into, because I already had an amazing designer with an amazing vision for how this wanted to be. And I felt like there was another level of service to the piece and service to this happening that felt like what I was there to do.
Very nice.
This happy hour is such a celebration of other related artists. I can't believe that I'm now 1 degree removed from Milton Glaser, Chris. That has absolutely made my day. To answer Matt's question, for Corsair at Chicago Fringe Opera, part of our remit is to tell stories about Chicago and Chicagoans. And so for me, the first step was thinking about what is the most important thing to me about Chicago, and that is Lake Michigan. That was a pretty direct path from Lake Michigan to telling a story about a pirate from the Decameron. And we tried to push that to its logical conclusion visually and aesthetically by having every location and every shot in the film have something to do with water. So that was our guiding principle, whether it's Lake Michigan or a bathtub or a kiddie pool or a jacuzzi or a river, everything we tried to connect to water, and that gave us our framework.
This is just a short aside, but not that you can see it in our piece, but our piece was also filmed about a block from Lake Michigan, just as a little aside there. But we had no water in ours except for when she's getting the water from the little dried up riverbed.
About the image, I mean, it's really interesting for me to hear everybody's process, because it's I'm thinking now, it's hard for me once the image is achieved to think back to how we got there. In our case, everything was designed. It wasn't the set. I don't know if everybody's worked. This happened in Central Park with ghosts, and so it was all designed in Final Cut Pro. So it came from an image. I mean, Nick, our librettist, had already a very visual scenario in mind, and then in the process, lots of things happened. I had a vision. I worked with a video designer that brought different ideas as well. We worked with a designer that actually his work didn't get to the final result, but I'm sure it also informed the process. And then the challenges changed the design as well, right? I had an idea of how things would work with the green screen and the positions, and then in the process, the piece became its own beast, and it's hard for me to pinpoint on this now what was my original idea, what was the librettist, who brought what, because in the stew, well, it became this. I love the final result, but and I love the process. It's great to hear everybody's process as well.
But Milena, your piece also, weren't you the most spread out of the creators? I mean, I think you were all over the globe.
Oh, yeah.
None of you were in the same country. Well, maybe a few of you were, but
same country, yes, but not
mind
same
blowing.
coast.
How we talked about how the films make it able to reach a wider audience, for
but
my
we
client,
also a wider cast.
But you made a work of art with people across all of the,
we were never in the
zones.
same room. Nobody was ever in the same room. So we had a singer in London, the music director played piano in France, one of the singers in the West Coast, two of the singers, one in Queens, one in Manhattan, another one in Brooklyn, and me in Manhattan, but we were never in the same space. Even the ones that we were here in New York, we worked everything remote.
I think that's fascinating. I think that's fascinating because we're so isolated, and we're also able to branch out in ways that this time we've never had before.
That was the same case for the Everything Comes to a Head. We had two singers in Toronto. Luckily, they're married, and so they could film. A singer in Cincinnati, another down in Houston, and I'm in Minneapolis, and then the rest of the team was up in Duluth. So it was, but no one was ever in the same place at the same time.
John and Kathy, you went to great lengths to create the illusion of people in the same place at the same time. John, you were on location. You did have a married couple, which helped as far as proximity. But you almost have to watch. Maybe I don't know. Am I spoiling it? You almost have to watch The Roost twice to realize some cinematic legerdemain on John's part. There are people who are not in the same place, but you would swear you saw them together. Could you tell us about that process, John?
Yeah, I mean, one of my major visual concept for the whole thing was that I wanted the first, basically all of The Roost to be done with really, really tight, almost claustrophobic shots until they go outside. And then once they go outside of the house and say, we need fresh air, we need life, we just need to get out of this terrible confinement, the shots begin to open up. And that's when you see these more expansive, wide framed compositions. But we all got tested and went down to Charlottesville and shot in the C's beautiful mansion, because they're opera lovers, and we had stayed with them when we were doing shows in Charlottesville prior to this. And we all took tests. We took tests when we got down there. We all wore I had a mask on the entire time, but other than Sharon and Ryan, who play the leads, they had their masks off for their scenes together. But Emily, she was masked when she was around them, but then we had to film all of her stuff completely separately. We literally had two locations. We had Ryan and Sharon's apartment, and then we had the C's house. And we would literally film in one group in one and one in the other, and then swap. So we'd have to shut down 20 minutes to take all of the equipment and the crew, which was me and Paul, and that was really it, just the two of us. And then of course Bob, who conducted, and set up again. So it was a lot of back and forth over 48 hours, and a lot of clever editing.
Well done. Well done. Well, speaking of clever editing, Kathy, we had Luca Pizzaroni, who is in he was in Spain, I believe, when he was filming his portions. But you had 10 people to put on what was not a Zoom call, but needed to look like one.
Yeah. Well, that's just editing. That's just me cropping and pushing people around in boxes on the screen. But you were talking before about the look. How did you come up with the look? And I thought, well, I came up with a Zoom call. We're all living on Zoom, and we came up with this concept that this is a group reconnecting on Zoom, and they tell their stories that way. And I've had that experience. I've had a group, my first theater company from college we got a call and someone said, hey, let's have a Zoom call on Friday night. We had a couple great Friday night connections, which we probably wouldn't have had if we weren't in this world, but we discovered Zoom through the pandemic and reconnected, and everybody got a chance to tell, what have you worked on? What have you done? What crazy thing did your mom do? You remember that Easter when she had us all over and served us whatever? It's been super fun. But bringing everybody together there were the regular challenges of this person's at a different frame rate. This person is using an old iPhone or this thing that doesn't quite fit. This one person came in portrait, so it's a different size. And just trying to figure out how to make that look. Well, those are the things. We have different sizes on this call. It's how it goes. But the fun parts were figuring out where we could break that down, because we didn't want it just to be a Zoom call. And I remember having a conversation with George early on saying, like, we don't want this thing to start with a Zoom call. This is such a creative project. This is so innovative. There's so much great filmmaking to come that the first 10 minutes can't be a Zoom call, because everybody's going to go, oh, it's another Zoom opera, and they're never going to get to the stories, so and Matt and Peter had already come up with this concept that everybody gets to pour a drink, and we get to learn about the characters through the drink pouring. But I'll tell you what, my favorite, I drew it from the libretto. It comes from the music. It comes from the piece. My work always starts with, and I've had a couple of opportunities to start without it, and I'm lost. I keep saying I pull from the music. It doesn't go the other way around. Maybe I should learn how to do that, but that's not my story. But I was so impressed with the way Peter and Matt, you gave us an impossible task, but you insisted on getting the scores. There was a date to turn in the librettos for the chapter stories, and then there was a date to get the scores in. And then they wrote the frame story after having those things, because they wanted to take a character out of the stories and put them into the frame to tell the story. It wasn't just, we're going to create a thing and then tell these stories. It was, we're going to pull these characters out of the stories and create a world for them that it's natural for them to tell them. And they pulled themes in the frame. If you listen, they lead into, we come out of one story and we go into the next, and the music changes. Peter was careful to incorporate the themes of the compositions in the transitions. And that was, so I was always really careful of, we're coming from Milwaukee and we're going to this next bit. Of course, it's all gone now. I don't remember what the next one was, but we have to this is the character that's listening to this story and they're about to get tapped to tell theirs. And so where are they in the story? How are they reacting? And we used that speaker view of putting somebody in kind of a spotlight mode and putting some reactions on the top. And part of that was to get me out of problems when somebody was lip syncing badly or disappeared or was scratching their head or, was the unusable video. Or to say this person's coming up, their story's coming up and they're starting to feel contemplative, and here comes, we've looked at her a couple of times and she's looking thoughtful. Oh, she's about to tell us about how she got dumped on Twitter and is being circled. So I thought
I
that
want
was
to
a
talk
great challenge.
when working with you, Kathy, we're trying to make their films and responding to us and saying, oh, I did a take today, but I didn't like this, I didn't like that. Some people said, and Lucas said he had to learn how to pull back vocally because he had a microphone this far from him that he was blowing out. The singer said, oh my God, making too big of faces, right? Like I'm playing to the back of a 3,000 seat opera house and suddenly I'm on film. And all of us had to deal with this. I especially want to hear, of course, from Wayne and Sequoia because we haven't heard from them in a little bit. And their pieces were more domestic and more intimate, and we were close with those singers. But everyone, opera's a pretty big art form. The word grand is thrown around a lot. And most of us have worked on chamber pieces where the audience is closer and the sentiments are more intimate. But now we're on camera. And sure, we've had Met broadcasts and things where, like, the camera's looking at a stage show and they're making grotesque faces and you're looking at their tonsils all night, but it's okay because you're just going, well, I'm watching a film of a thing. But now we're making operatic films and we don't want to be put off. We want there to be some sense of verisimilitude and authenticity and honesty. So how did you, when directing the singers or when shooting the singers, how did you keep these things from all being just exploded by the giganticness of opera?
I have an answer to that. Anytime there was a really, really big note or a note that required a singer to make a particularly Celine Dion-esque face, you focused on something else. Or you position them in a way where they're being held or facing in profile so that it doesn't look like this. So there were ways in which if you knew that they had to do something, even if they were lip syncing, you would tell them, make it smaller, make it smaller. But if they have to really open wide to match in some way, you just can discreetly position the camera in such a way where they look their best. Because I think that at the end of the day, directing opera is about making the singers look great and making them heard or as comfortable as they can to sing. And I think that in film, you have to be even more careful because there are certain angles that no one looks good at when they have their mouth open. And so you have to really, really plan for that as you're shooting around them.
Wow.
It's funny. Ken Howard, the photographer for the Met and Santa Fe and all the important opera, he has a famous quote where he says, do you know the secret to getting a great photo of an opera singer is to wait till their mouth is closed. Which is funny, but it's also not the way to get an iconic photo of an opera singer. Like, if you close your eyes and think of Pavarotti, is his mouth open? Like, you have to sort of balance those things. And John, you did a beautiful job of capturing them singing. We saw them singing. But knowing how to avoid those moments where you sort of freeze and it takes you out of that because we're seeing them closer than we should. And in photography, you're seeing them frozen in an athletic accomplishment with, there's also pictures of pole vaulters and all sorts of athletes where they make crazy faces because of the physical exertion. And that this is a challenge. This opera on film is a particular challenge because we need to create that beauty. We also want to capture that feeling that they are.
I think your point about athleticism is huge, though, because I think more important to me than beauty is the authenticity of it. So for me, I respond, and this is, again, just taste. I think there's going to be, again, as opera being a grand art form, there are many people who love to go to the opera and close their eyes. And I am not one of those people. I want to find the weird things happening on stage. And so for me, there's beauty in the ugliness of getting that note, because that's a damn achievement, man. And the things that are happening all around, I think great. Let's advance beyond our obsessive natures with perfection and find the reality of the art form as well. Because I think that's going to be the next great key to this form.
Yeah, I mean, I think also something that Kathy brought up earlier was that, like, the idea of documentation and filmmaking. And I think that's something that people are really now understanding of, this idea of like, oh, I can make a film, and because we can't be in theaters right now. And documentation tends to be like, oh, I'm going to put a camera here and step away and it will capture what it captures. But none of us chose to really do that. And I think that was for a specific reason, because we know that we wanted to shoot for this reason or this location or all of these things. And that's sort of what makes filmmaking so special. With theater, you hire your set designer, you make a beautiful space, you bring the audience into that world for, the X amount of time that they're there, and they can look at whatever they want to look at whenever they want to look at. You can use lights or use whatever you want, but they're still going to end up looking at the ensemble member in the background if that's what they choose to look at. But with film, you're the audience eyes with that lens. And so you're able to pick that moment, whether it be this pretty or ugly or beautiful singing moment to have, or whether it be, on a bathroom floor in the middle of an ocean. Like, all of these things are able to. And I think that's something that we have been able to find, at least here with this coalition, of what we can capture with opera.
We're looking to the future. And I do want to say hello to folks who are watching out there in internet land. Robert in Chicago, Jorge, Jim. Oh, Gilda says hello. Chris, your sister says hello. Thank you folks for tuning in. Many of you have projects in the works, some immediately. Christina, I want to hear about what's coming up in the jungle. I saw it come up on my Facebook today. So if we could, I see we're at the end of an hour, and it was the happy hour. But tell me something that you've learned through this process on Tales that you're going to take away artistically, or if you just want to go right out and promote something you got coming up, now is the time to do it. And I mean, your guests on a talk show, you should be promoting your project. So tell me what's on your mind. What are you bringing into the future, or what are you working on now?
I'll hop in. You teed me off. The Decameron project really helped me get to this next project that I'm doing currently that's out on the Jungle Theater website called Is Edward Snowden Single? And it's a new play by an amazing playwright named Kate Cortese. And it's a play within a play, and it revolves around a friendship, two women who play 20-odd characters, trying to figure out the question of integrity and something that happened. But there's animation in it. It was important to me to put that into why we're doing it in this format, and what I learned from doing the project with Lyric Opera of the North aided me greatly. But in this too, in all of these discussions, I think the thing that's really on my mind is, when are we going to get ahead of the technology? Because right now we're dealing with Zoom, which is wonderful. It was a corporate model of being able to have discussions, but especially for music making, I'm excited for the moment when we find some technology, or technology is developed that is for us, to be able to have ensemble when, Milena, as you were saying, your ensemble is all over the world. I'm excited for the visionaries who are working right now to try to make things that can do the things we're thinking about.
Well,
I'm part of two. Sorry, Danny, go ahead. I'm actually working with two vocal ensembles. One of them is working actually with technology. We are actually improvising at the same time. So that is one technology that there's people around the world trying to solve the issue of latency, so musicians can play at the same time. I'm working with a group called Moving Star. We have a show in the end of the year, December 26th. But December 20, next Sunday, my husband is the conductor of a group called the Fairfield County Chorale, a large symphonic choir based in Connecticut. And they're doing their end of the year concert, and it's virtual. And he's working with seven video artists that are doing each one a different piece that is performed by a virtual choir. So I invite everybody to that. It's free. FCC is the name of the chorus. Yeah, that's my next thing. And I'm working with Teatro Grattacielo next year, but it's not announced, so I can't tell more. but it's there. It's there.
Very nice. Very nice.
At Milwaukee Opera Theater, our next thing is the Distance Commissions, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's two commissions based around the theme of distance, for obvious reasons right now. That's going to be completely virtual as well, so anyone can come and check that out. There's going to be one released at the end of January and one released at the end of February, still kind of figuring out the dates. But like with the Decameron Opera Coalition, the two pieces are very different stylistically. One is more sort of naturalistic, I would say, based more kind of on the Zoom world that we're all inhabiting. And the other one is sort of more akin to what MOT did for this project, where it sort of has a more music video approach. So totally different approaches, but hopefully really cool work happening. And then we're also going to kind of couch it in these virtual soirees. So you get, the whole experience of seeing the piece, also a little Q&A session, and some social time as well. So kind of doing the best we can to make it through the pandemic.
Very nice. Wayne, I saw a microphone come on there for a moment.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on some of the things Christina said, looking at the technology kind of like made for you. And I think there's a lot of tools out there that, I mean, can be leveraged right now. They might not be perfect, but looking at things in the VR space, allow you, as Sequoia had mentioned, like be able to look where you want to look, see what you want to see. It still enables a set, whether that set is real or virtual. I mean, these are all things that can be done. So I hope that Opera embraces that in the future and does more things. It does, as we said before, make it more accessible. And I'm kind of like more of a tech geek. I really enjoy those kind of things. So I would love to see the two of them kind of get together and do wonderful things.
Very nice. Seems like it's on its way. Anybody else? Parting thoughts?
I'm
Well,
taking,
I-
I'm sorry. I'm
Chris,
taking
go ahead.
advantage of this newfound interest in animation and storytelling. And I just finished a piece for a singer-songwriter out on Long Island, and the name of the song is Angels in the Snow. So you can sort of imagine what I'm animating, but it was a good first test to see if I could pull that off and make it look fun. And you can see it, shameless plug, on my Instagram feed, which is He Draws Things on Instagram, and I'll be posting my animations there.
I have 3 things I'm going to be up all night doing, but I want to plug something I have nothing to do with, which is Resonance Works is releasing a new Baresi and Hilliard piece. It's supposed to be Hilliard and Baresi. Sorry, I reversed that. Verity with vegetable. I believe that I saw a carrot singing Karanome. Is that true?
You do indeed. There are actually more than 100 puppets made out of fresh produce, singing the complete works of Verdi. It's a comic documentary of Verdi's life, loves, his work, the Risorgimento, all his operas. And it is Sunday, this coming Sunday, 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern, a collaboration with Resonance Works, a member of the Decameron Opera Coalition, and Hilliard and Baresi. This was going to be a live show at a gala in April, and now it's a much more extensive project and a film that goes up on Sunday. So you can get tickets at resonance.org. And tickets are still available, and it's a whole thing. There's going to be trivia and bingo and speaking with the artists, more than 100 puppets, more than 30 singers, a string quartet. I mean, this is the most epic vegetable puppet opera you've ever seen. Bring the family. It's way off the wall. You'll learn a lot, but it's a lot of fun. If you're a fan of classical music comedy, the likes of which you don't see as much anymore. I mean, you see Gudesman Jew, but if you loved Victor Borga, Anna Russell, Spike Jones, this is in that vein. So check it out Tuesday afternoon, 3 Eastern, 2 Central. Tickets still available at resonanceworks.org. Verdi by
Sunday, not Tuesday.
Thank you.
I
Sunday.
can't. This is clearly the future of opera. Potatoes and carrots and cucumbers singing Verdi. Like, I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm counting hours, truly.
Well, Maria doesn't like it when I say it, but if it's a big hit, I think we can do a sequel with sausage and call it. So
Danny Brilo can help you with that. Milwaukee has got you covered.
All right, I want to invite everybody watching. There's only 20 days left to see Tales from a Safe Distance at decameronoperacoalition.org. So if you've got your tickets you want to watch or watch again, 20 days. If you're going to buy that as a gift, today is the day to do it and hear and watch all these operas that you've heard about tonight. Join us here Friday upcoming for the last DOC happy hour with singers. So let's hear from the singers what we put them all through to make this insane operatic film venture. Folks, thank you very much for your time tonight. It was a wonderful call. I learned a lot, and you sound hopeful about the future of things. I hope that I can be in an actual room with you soon enough, but it has been a real delight to be in virtual rooms with you for these past several months. So thank you for the art that you've brought to the world. And thanks for tuning in tonight. Good night, folks.